Hey, it's Jamil Jude, your artistic director at True Colors Theater Company. And I want to welcome you to our community conversation, Black Theater and the Black Lives Matter movement. Our first community conversation of the new year, and there could be no better time to have such an important dialogue. You know, at True Colors, we seek to thrive at the intersection of artistic excellence and civic engagement. For us, that means we see the role of the artist as vital in our civic discourse. As issues rage throughout our community, be the violence we see in the national media or the challenges in the streets of our own hometowns, we know that art can shine a light on a subject that allows us all to view it in a new way that can inspire action and lead to significant change. We hope that today's conversation, featuring some of the voices who impacted the Black arts movement and its revolutionary roots, as well as the socially engaged artists of today, will remind us all of the impact we can have as we move to shape the world we want to live in. I want to give a special shout out to Woody King and the entire New Federal Theater family on celebrating their 50th anniversary. We are honored to have Mr. King as part of this amazing panel and to be the descendants of the amazing legacy of the New Federal Theater. I also want to give a shout out to our community partner, Black. Give a shout out to Brian K. Layton Paisner for sponsoring our Community Conversation series. The Hansberry Project for co-launching our new program, The Drinking Gourd, where we will work to unite Black theaters across North America to co-commission, co-develop, and co-premiere more Black work. You'll hear more about that program soon. And I want to thank you, our amazing and loyal patrons, for your continued support and trust in True Colors. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, my name is Jamil Jude. I am the host today, and my favorite job in the whole wide world is to be the artistic director at Kenny Leon's True Colors Theater Company. And I want to welcome you to our first community conversation of the year, Black Theater and the Black Lives Matter movement. Y'all, I could not be more excited for a conversation. It feels like the world is trying to reset itself, but what we don't want to happen is the push that we've seen for justice over the last several months to slow back. And at True Colors, you know, we believe in thriving in the intersection of artistic excellence and civic engagement. We also believe in honoring the legacy and the tradition in which we as a Black theater find ourselves in. And today's conversation is going to marry all of those different things. We're going to talk about the legacy of where we've come in the Black theater and its revolutionary roots. But we're also going to talk about why this moment, more than ever, we need theater and artists to not disassociate themselves from their civic responsibility, but really, really lock in, lean into the work of the community and push us forward. So I'm excited that you're going to hear from so many amazing panelists today, and it's going to really bless you. I hope it blesses you as much as it blesses me, because I've been jonesing for this one for a couple of weeks now. So, you know, without further ado, I want to get us started. We wouldn't have a true conversation if we weren't bringing some art with it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce an amazing performer who's going to speak to you today. Her name is Brittany Horton, and she's a member of Black ATL, Black Leaders Advocating Cultural Theater, our community partner today. And she's going to give us a take on an original monologue. The scene is set as a dinner
Chris,
party.
I have loved you for 15 years of my 28-year life. I've seen you evolve. I've seen you maneuver through the world. I have seen you, and I can see you. Why can't you see me? But love is unconditional, but I have been conditioned to love you. From the time I was born, I have been told to honor, respect, take care of you, Black man. I've been told to give of myself until there was no more giving to be had. But even then, dig deeper, give some more. Baby, you don't think I know the weight that you carry? Oh, I know every time you walk out that door, you are worried because it might be your last. So to ease that worry, I hug you deeper because you need to know a hug again. But I notice you don't return that back to me. Baby, you haven't even stopped to see that I am scared. I carry the same color as you, and I'm dying too, only they ain't rallying and marching for me, only for you. You just said Black Lives Matter, right? I'm Black. I have life. So why am I exempt from your rage unless it's directed at me, a Black woman? Chris, does it actually have to be me with that hashtag and 8 bullets in my body for you to get out there and shout Black Lives Matter for me? A Black woman who carries you, the white man, the white woman on her back. I have seen you all of my life, Chris. When will you see me too?
If you all are in the chat, please give a round of applause and show your love for Brittany Horton in that amazing piece, Unconditional. As we speak about hands, I want to also give a quick shout out to our ASL interpreters. They're from Hands in Motion. I want to give a special shout out to the CEO and owner, Ms. Marsha Coles Felix, who is also going to be one of our interpreters today. They've been making sure that our community conversations, as well as our live stage performances, when we can go back to the theater, have been as accessible to as many people as possible. So special thanks and shout out to them. Y'all, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's facilitator, but I would be remiss before I do that and say, why Ms. Vivian Phillips has been so crucial to this conversation. She is a Seattle-based communications professional and arts leader who, along with Valerie Curtis Newton, who's one of our personal mentors of mine, co-founded the Hansberry Project back in 2005. Now, you've heard the Hansberry Project with us before because we just launched a major initiative with them called the Drinking Gourd. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end, but just know that True Colors is partnering with several theaters across North America to make sure that we co-commission, co-develop, and co-produce more Black work. So we're really thankful to Valerie Curtis Newton and Ms. Vivian Phillips for establishing the Hansberry Project and looking to partner with True Colors. Now, let's get down to business. Ms. Vivian Phillips has served as the managing director for 5 years of operation of the Hansberry Project, and she's produced various theater and led marketing efforts as well. She currently serves on the boards of KUOW Radio, which is the local NPR affiliate in Seattle, the University of Washington Foundation, and is the incoming chair of For Culture, the Martin Luther King County Cultural Services Agency. She's going to moderate an amazing panel, and I'll let her take it from here. Thank you, Ms. Vivian, for moderating this conversation. And y'all, I will see you in the comments section, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Oh, thank you so very much, Jamil. I'm more than honored. I'm humbled to be a part of this conversation. And I'm so excited for the Pacific Northwest, for us here in Seattle to be represented, which is where I am. And I just have to give another shout out to Valerie Curtis Newton, who's always representing the Pacific Northwest and always keeping the voices of Black theater artists alive here and across the country. So I want to say to everybody that the introductions that I will do of the panelists in no way will cover all of the accomplishments. I am going to abbreviate these introductions so we can get straight into the conversation, but I want to encourage you to go to the True Colors website, go to the organization websites, or just Google these folks so you can really get to know the depth and the breadth of their contributions and their activity. So I'm going to start by introducing the Godfather, if I may, Mr. Woody King, who in 1970 founded the New Federal Theater. He's produced over 400 plays and is an acclaimed director, having directed productions for regional theater across the U.S., and he is recipient of a very long and impressive list of honors. Welcome, Mr. King.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes. And Stephanie Hewley, who is currently a performing arts consultant. She's worked with the Negro Ensemble Theater and as general manager and company manager for Broadway, off-Broadway, national and international touring companies, and many of us know her as the first artistic director at the National Black Arts Festival, Atlanta. It's so good to see you, Stephanie.
Thank you. It's great to see you too. And good to see you, Woody.
Good to see you, Stephanie.
Right on. Jonathan McCrory has been the artistic director at National Black Theater since 2012, and he also participated in development of the National Black Theater of Sweden. He's an award-winning director, producer, and creative doula. Hello, how are you, Jonathan? You're on mute so far. Okay, we're gonna get you unmuted.
Oh, hello. Hi. So happy to be here. Yes, happy to be here.
Thank you. And Atlanta's own Marcus Hopkins Turner is a performer whose work can be seen on stage and in film. He is a co-founder of Black ATL, Black Leaders Advocating Cultural Theater, who is one of our co-presenters today. And he is a very present advocate for just uplifting Black voices in theater across all theater scenes. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. And finally, Alexis Woodard is an Atlanta-based director and a Spelman Leadership Fellow at the Alliance Theater. She's also a former intern at True Colors Theater, and she joins us with considerable directing credit already under her belt. And she is booked and will be continuing to stay busy practicing her craft. So good to see you. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you. So stoked to be here.
Yes. So I'm going to start the conversation with Woody King. I have to say, Woody, that you have been on my radar absolutely since I even thought about working in theater. But I want to ask about your the beginning of your career, when in 1965 you were the cultural arts director for a program called Mobilization Youth. For you. And it happened to be on the cusp of the Black Power, Black Panther movement coming out of or moving through the civil rights movement. So I want to know how the confluence of the civil rights movement and the rising Black Power movement influenced the way in which you developed and conducted that program back in 1965.
That was a part of what was then called the poverty program. And the poverty program, at that time, we were located on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And a couple of years later, the Negro Ensemble came into existence. And so students who were in our acting workshops and our filmmaking workshops really blossomed. And we could send young people over to the Negro Ensemble Company, and they became sort of like apprentices. And the young filmmakers at that time, we made our own films. We got money from special foundations. And we were very, very, very influenced by the Black Power movement, the Black Panther movement, and the radical movement of that time. And I think all the teachers I had working with us, some of them were actors at the Negro Ensemble Company. Francis Foster, for example, was a major actor at the Negro Ensemble Company. And all of that was influential. But it was the theater training when Mobilization went out of business, like a lot of programs moved on to other things. And we moved to Henry Street Settlement. And at Henry Street Settlement, the director asked me, did I want to start a theater, because he knew I was so interested in theater. And I said, yeah, I want to start something called the New Federal Theater, based on the old Federal Theater out of the Roosevelt administration, 1935 to 1939. And they had a Negro unit, but I didn't want to hold it at the Negro unit, even though all those people from the Negro unit I had gotten to know. Fred O'Neill, people like that. Fred O'Neill, Ernestine McClendon, so many others who had moved back home to where I was living originally in Detroit, and they became my friends, and we would talk about it a lot. So when I started the new Federal Theater, there was an influx of white Americans who were still living. John Houseman was still living. So he frequented our theater a lot. And in the early days before he got ill.
Let me can I interrupt you and ask you, you said you didn't want to do the Negro unit. Can you expand on why you didn't want to?
Because it was a very small part of the Federal Theater Project.
Okay.
The big, huge part and major part was what Orson Welles and John Houseman created.
I see.
And that was called the Federal Theater Project. And the Negro Unit was a part of the Federal Theater Project.
So that at that time, in 1968, moving into 1970, there was a lot of militancy, if you will, present in Black theater. What are your thoughts about whether or not we've lost some of that in Black theater today?
Whether we want some of that today.
Have we lost it, or do you think that it's still present, a level of militancy in Black theater?
I think it's all in the play. It's always in the play. And if you select a play that's average and not that penetrating, you will have an average production, not a penetrating production.
Yeah, got you. I want to move on to Stephanie. Stephanie, you have worked in what we know as mainstream theater. I mean, Broadway, off-Broadway, spent some time with the Shakespearean Company, the Public Theater. I am wondering what you have seen and how things have changed in the ways that Black leadership may or may not be present in mainstream theater. At this moment where we're talking about Black Lives Mattering, are you seeing that Black lives actually matter across the spectrum?
Well, I think we've seen these periods of history where our lives really mattered, where we were really at the forefront, no question. In the 60s, the 70s, when I first got to Broadway, there were 9 Black shows on Broadway.
Oh.
9. I know people can't hardly believe it, but
what year was that?
It was like in the early 70s. This was a span of time in the 70s. Okay. And that's how I got into the managers union, was because Intozaki had, for Colored Girls, Woody and them were all a part of, they had brought that show from the West Coast to the East Coast, and Intozaki was coming to Broadway and they were going to do a national show. And she said, if they don't have a Black woman manager, she wasn't going to let them take it out on the road. So Joe and Manny Eisenberg came to me and asked me if I would consider it. I was still an apprentice, and I was like, yeah, I'll take it, of course. Wonderful. But I feel like, I'm excited about the time that we're in right now, because I feel like what's happened in this last year is that the covers have been pulled back. We get to see the underbelly of the evils, the original sins of our country, and everybody's saying, okay, who are we going to be now? How do we create a more equitable world, let alone equitable theater community? And so I'm as hopeful as I was in the 60s and 70s when we were saying Black power, Black is beautiful, we have a voice, we have a right to be here. Our voices matter. Black lives have always mattered as far as I'm concerned in the Black theater movement. And so to me, the work that I'm seeing now is just speaking to this moment in time that we can say, okay, so here's the platform. We have to make up something new because we all agree that the paradigm is broken. It was always broken for Black theater because we never had the kinds of sponsorship and donors. And if Woody had Mr. Mertz just funding his new Federal Theater, it would be a different story.
Right.
The model, the paradigm that we created like theirs was never ours. So this moment in time to me is our moment to make a new paradigm. And I really believe it has to do with partnerships and collaborations with the unusual suspects.
Okay. Okay. We're talk a little bit more about the particular kinds of partnerships that we need to see develop more of as the conversation moves on. But I want to switch over to Jonathan a little bit and talk about the National Black Theater's Unbossed and Unbothered Micro Commissions. So this was a series of works from Black women that was intended to generate awareness around the national election, talking about the time that we're in right now, right? Yeah. So these programs were intended to do what? Do they take on a life beyond this particular national election awareness? Mm-hmm. And they stimulate possibly more awareness around political involvement in general?
So what I can say is that it was really sparked out of yes. To answer your question in the most succinct way, it's a yes. Is this to spark a kind of awareness in general of the national consciousness and national awareness of we're in the centennial mark, the 100th year of women's the 19th ratification. So this is 100 years since women were able to vote in this country. However, when that was actually penned, not all women were able to vote then. It was a very segmented group of women that were able to vote. And so MBT actually, that program was sparked out of a partnership with Park Avenue Armory. We had actually co-collaborated together to create an evening called 100 Years, 100 Women. And that was supposed to be an in-person event at the Park Avenue Armory in their drill hall, with the hopes and the desire to really recenter the women that weren't centered 100 years ago, recenter them and have a conversation about how a lot of Black and brown women and women X people have actually been the forebearers of liberation and radical movement to recenter the conversation, understand who has actually birthed this nation, who has led this nation to its space of revitalization. And even if we think about the voting, right? The voting of the votes that happened in Atlanta that actually shifted the tide of and thank you for going blue. But those if we think about who led it, who bared the weight of it. I think MBT was seeking inside of that action to actually uplift the body of who holds that blood memory, who carries that blood memory. So I think with 100 Years, 100 Women, an event that happened in August with Park Avenue Armory and 10 other nonprofit organizations in New York City, and then Unbossed and Unbought was our way to continue that conversation, because we knew that if we could do, and we partnered with Michelle Obama's When We All Vote, so that we could continue to really bear that torch all the way until the finish line. I'm understanding that multiple interactions, multiple ways of engagement was really the only way that we were going to squelch and actually move forward the conversation that we needed. So I will say the work that the artists have created has sparked other conversations. I think that MBT really tries to function as an ignition space, not necessarily the space to complete it all, but a space to say, I give you resources, I give you support, I give you comfort to understand what does it mean to ignite an idea and give that idea the kind of flame that it needs to really take launch and to fly.
Well, that's really great that it picked up on Shirley Chisholm's 1972 campaign slogan, Unbought and Unbossed, and really lifted the awareness around the role of women in carrying the weight, if you will, as Brittany said in her piece. We've been here, I've seen you. So Marcus, talking about how then something like a program that Jonathan just described becomes a kind of community-wide initiative, a spark for community engagement. How do you see community engagement, community activism? How is it different today than it may have been just 5 years ago with the Black Lives Matter movement at hand?
I mean, I feel like there's a couple of avenues of difference, a couple of reasons for this. So one, obviously technology is a lot different, right? We're able to mobilize at an alarming rate. An example, the group I co-founded, Black ATL, right? We planned a march for artists in the city of Atlanta, right? We planned it, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 days before we wanted it to happen.
Uh-huh.
And in a couple of days, we had over 2,000 people, 2,000 artists marching in downtown Atlanta, right? So now we're in a period of extreme mobilization. If I want to get something done, I can literally just reach to my phone and it could be done tomorrow, right? So I think that right there adds a heightened level. And because of this level of communication, because of this level of mobilization, it actually, for us, it raises the stakes, right? Because now more people have my ear, more people have my attention, more people hear the actual message.
Yeah.
Right. So now instead of, hey, I can go to, I can go down to the people who I know and I can talk to them. And yes, of course, we have our digital echo chambers. But, in the past, you go to the people you know and that spreads word of mouth and all of that. But now I can literally, at the palm of my hand, I can reach 4,000 people in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And so it raises the stakes. It raises the stakes of all of these movements, of every single one. Now, like this could be a good thing and this could be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
For us, we've tried our best to take advantage of, the possibilities of what technology has brought to us. And for something like Jonathan's program, and in the climate that we are today, Stephanie touched on this. This is a very exciting time for Black artists and for Black grassroots movement and for just Black art in general. Black people being on stage, Black people being able to have their stories told, right? This is a very extreme point. Now, she said when she got into the business, there were 9 Black shows on Broadway. I don't even know what to say.
Incredible.
I don't even think there are 9 Black shows in Atlanta,
Right.
Like that's.
I want to come back to and talk a little bit more about the creativity that becomes engaged when artists are leading these community movements as well. But before we have to go to break, I do want to bring Alexis into the conversation quickly. Alexis, you're a part of a new generation of Black women leaders in theater. And I wonder, what kind of relationship do you have with Black female representation in leadership? And do you feel any kind of responsibility to hold a particular kind of space as a Black woman leader?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, I feel like that's just a common thing with like Black people in general, like the need or the pressure to feel representative of an entire group of people, which goes back to the whole idea that Blackness is not a monolith. Like, I, as a Black woman, cannot speak for all of the Black women that I know and all the Black women that I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think I'm really fortunate to work with a lot of Black women. We were talking earlier before we kind of came on with the Tiny Theater Company that I'm working with right now, founded by a Black woman. My manager right now is a Black woman, Tanasha Kajese Bolden. And we've got, just thinking about Black women who are leading all over the country, having the opportunity to work on a kids play about racism earlier this year with Kalia Davis, who's now the artistic director of the Bay Area's Children's Theater. And I think about the changes that these women have been able to make and represent in their places. We have Hannah Sharif, we have Nataki Garrett, and I'm so inspired by Black women in positions of leadership, in artistic director positions. I myself one day want to run my own theater.
Okay.
Yes, it's in there. It's on the goal sheet.
Get out.
Because we all know that leadership leads to representation, right? So just going back to what Marcus said about being in such an exciting time for our stories to be told and for telling the stories that we want to tell and for seeing those stories on stage, it all starts at the top, all starts at the leadership.
Well, I think what you've said then is not only do you feel a responsibility, it's in your bones and you want to be one of those representatives. I'm here for it, all here for it. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and continue the conversation. So happy to be here talking with theater leaders around the country about Black Lives Matter and Black theater. We'll be back in a moment.
Join us every Thursday at 1 p.m. as we go live for the True Colors podcast, where we sit down with artists and civic leaders to discuss the biggest topics affecting our community. Every week, our guests drop gems of knowledge while bringing the fun. Can't catch us live? No problem. You can view past episodes on our website and YouTube channel. Make the True Colors podcast part of your weekly routine.
Tanya, can you just speak to why it's so important for you to give to the next generation, to the students, to the early career actors, to help them break open that talent that lies deep inside them?
I can only keep what I have by giving it away. And so as long as I know that and I keep that in the forefront, then I know that it's my job. I cannot go about this thing called theater, acting, or whatever if I don't help pull some young people up. I'm gonna say it again, literally, theater and art saved my life.
True Colors Theater, where Black stories are told.
And we are back. We had a nice little break with Wale. Assuming you're voting for everybody that's Black. I love that. I want to pick up the conversation with you, Stephanie, speaking about the relevance of Black women in the movement. Black women have been at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movement, been at the forefront of all of the national election movement. We've been administrators of change forever. So what do you see or have you seen around the area of Black women really being in administrative leadership in Black theater? I mean, as producers, I mean, as even theater owners and innovators.
Well, I think we're really seeing it come to fruition now. I mean, you think about when I came to New York, I was down at Vinette Carroll's at the Urban Art Corps, and I saw all these really strong Black women who were writing and producing. And I mean, even in Woody Shop and NEC, I mean, there were Black women that were writing and directing, you know, they were coming into their own. And so I feel like we've always been there. We've always mattered. And now, thanks to all of this crossover now, this storytelling crossover from theater to film to television, I mean, I'm loving Shondaland, okay? I mean, I feel like we are on a major role. Like I was saying, when we get these windows, you see this huge push, and then it kind of, you know, it just kind of plateaus.
Yeah.
But this time feels different. And maybe, like Marcus said, he kind of finished the thought that I was having when I talked the first time. With these digital platforms now, this virtual world, the technology, the evolution of it, and the speed at which it's evolving, I feel is just giving Black women, Black people, people of color, platforms that they never had before. And so it's what we do with them. How do we build this together? How do we create this sustainable platform that can live on for generations and generations, so we never have to come back to this idea that we're not in the room, our lives don't matter?
Right. Mr. King, I want to ask you, you know, Black lives have been trying to matter since like 1821 in theater, when William Brown founded the African Grove Theater. We saw what happened to that. What's your vision for the way in which Black theater and Black Lives Matter movement, just like the Black Panther, Black Power movement kind of merge? What's your vision for how this goes forward in the future?
I think it's always, and it will always depend on the play.
Okay.
You know, if Ntezaki's and her 7 women, that was a statement. Cassandra Medley, Ma Rose is a statement. J.E. Franklin's Black Girl is a statement. It's always the statement that reaches out to more people. Now, we can talk about our aspirations, our goals, but if you don't sit down and read the play if you don't say, I'm going to put this on, I'm going to raise 50, 60, 70, $100,000 to put this on, and then a month or 2 months later, you reach 2 or 3 dozen people, that is the statement. That is what makes the difference. That is what inspires people. Now, of course, you got to be prepared to be wrong sometimes. Okay, and if you're wrong, you won't be around long. You know, it's as simple as that. We're talking to Ken Leon's True Colors. What plays are True Colors developing and producing? Not what plays that they can get from New Federal, what plays they can get from New York Shakespeare, what plays can they get from August Wilson? What plays are they doing? You know, Wilson created Black Horizons, and that's where his plays came out of. And Rob Penny and that group of people who wrote plays. So it's always the play, the vehicle. Now, as an offshoot of that, you can have acting classes for young people who come into the business, or a very talented, very young person will come into the business and be 25 or 26 years old and write a dynamite play. Like J.E. Franklin was 24 when she wrote Black Girl. And Ntozake was 26 when she wrote For Colored Girls. So that's what ultimately matters. And then as a theater that actually goes out and finds things, really defines the money to develop those things, and where do you put them? And I think knowing National Black Theater, that's what Jonathan and his people are doing. They're trying to build an institution where these things can go. It's almost impossible to do both.
I think what you're saying, everything that you're saying is like a commercial for the Drinking Gourd Project. You know, it's like, this is the reason we've got to bring more people in to write more material. That's how you get the merge between the Black theater movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. So I am going to go to you, Jonathan, and ask you to talk a little bit about just how you see the process of developing more work outside of the Drinking Gourd among Black activists, and how that gets brought into a Black theater environment.
Yeah, wonderful question. I want to just bring up something just to talk about ownership just a little bit, because I think ownership is a key aspect when we're trying to talk about what is the vehicle that allows for the sustaining viability and centering of Black folk inside of their own creation. And I'm blessed to work inside of an institution that my founder, Dr. Barbara Antier, bought a city block. That buying of City Block actually made sure that National Black Theater was able to be autonomous in our exploration around Black liberation, that we didn't have to pander or actually meet some quotas that many of our counterparts had to do inside of the ever-changing winds of philanthropy and of nuance of like what people care about. And I think when we start talking about this new technology, I also just implore and just empower folks to think about, how are we owning that technology? How are we centering ourselves to be not just the people who buy into AR, VR? How are we buying into being the owners of AR and VR? There's beautiful entrepreneurs like Crux that are run by Black women, that are really creating dynamic spaces to make sure that ownership is we're not just the buyers. It's not like we're not creating another sneaker movement where we are the ones they are creating chattel for us to buy, consume, but not actually own and invest. so that our dollars go back into the watering hole. When I think about what's necessary, when I talk about storytelling and the creation of new storytelling, I really start to think about, especially now, especially in this time frame, I think of two things that a Black artist and a Black playwright in particular, and I even think of myself as when I think of a Black producer and curation, have to think about. In what ways am I giving my community the opportunity to address, come into relationship to their grief? There is a deep grief that is written, that is riding underneath this society, that needs to be examined. And that examination can happen in two ways. One, am I providing a space that allows for that grief to be joyfully not a part of the psyche, right? We have speakeasies. There are all we have a history of creating healthy distractions to allow us to go back into the lion's den. Also, in concert with that, we need opportunities to help me understand that I am actually grieving. That for me to name that in this moment, although it's abundant, that there's a deep grief because I can't have the job that I thought I was having, the career that I was building. There was this beautiful quote, this post by Amber Iman, where she talked about, I have been on I think I'm probably butchering it, but 4,000 auditions and I haven't booked one thing, but I'm still valuable. I'm still meaningful. My life still matters. I went on 4,000 auditions. I didn't stop. I'm not at my goal, but I didn't stop. So inside of what she's saying, although she is empowering herself inside of it, she's also naming a grief inside of a career that she has invested her whole entire body, mind, psyche inside of. So when I think about this new cultural production in this new economy, because we are in a new economy, we're in a new space. When I think about the cultural production in this new economy, I ask myself, how are we addressing that new economy that allows for us not to work from a patriarchal lens, which is, from my vantage point, I feel like that's how we used to deal. How do we deal from a matriarchal lens? How do we deal from a space that allows for the femme energy, the love energy, the heart energy, the innocent energy, the calling in energy, not instead of calling out energy, to be a part of our ethos of constructing? Because if we can construct from there, I think we've done a paradigm shift. We have done the building from a masculine patriarchal lens. And I think that's why we're returning back to having a cyclical cycle that's saying, don't you remember that we were here before? And so I just invite us, as we think about what Black theater and the Black Lives Movement, all of that, how all of that works in concert. I say, how does it work in concert that centers the heart energy of a feminine movement, a feminist movement that doesn't sit on the gender binary, but actually centers into the understanding that we all have it inside of us. There's a woman's energy inside of me. Even though I might understand myself as a cis man, there's a woman's energy inside of me. And the moment that I tap in and tune in and unleash that space, I then begin to speak from a wholeness that then potentially allows for a future to be on earth that has never been seen.
Okay.
On earth that has never been actually materialized. So I just invite that as we think about the friction of the two, because I think it's a powerful possible friction. I'm not saying we don't need the friction. I just think that we need to wrap that friction in a grace, love, heart pattern that allows for it to become a diamond.
Well, that's a really, really revolutionary way to be thinking about it, very, very appropriate way to be thinking about it. And it also answers a lot of the questions that we're talking about. Do Black female lives matter in addition to all the rest of the lives that we're protesting for? But listen, I want to ask you, Alexis, I know that you have a lot of experience in the Shakespearean style of theater. My question to you is, what intersections do you see on the horizon that more specifically link the traditions of theater, like Shakespeare, to those stories that are emerging, that are rooted in a Black diasporic context? Yeah. I'm a big fan of discovering and really interrogating those intersections in my work. I remember a couple of years ago, I did a program called BADA in Oxford with the British American Drama Academy, and it was an acting conservatory. And we went to the RSC.
and we saw a version of Romeo and Juliet there. And I remember we were all on the bus going back, and everyone was talking, oh, if you could act in this play, what would you do, da 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 da. And I think that was when I really started thinking of myself as a director, because I was so interested in what my identity could do to shift and mold that story, and to take that back to my town, to my school, and to try those different things. And I've been able to get a slot directing in our school season. I graduated from Spelman the next year. And I did an adapted version of Romeo and Juliet that addressed the class divide in the Black community. So Spelman is set in the West End of Atlanta, which is it's a poorer community than like Buckhead. It's one of the poorer communities of Atlanta. And Spelman and Clark and Morehouse are these very elite HBCUs. And we used to talk a lot in class just about the dichotomy of being at an HBCU, at a private institution, and then walking outside and seeing so many people who are homeless. And so I wanted to talk about those intersections in that show. And so just to go back to your questions, the way that like our story and everywhere that we came from, our class, us being Black, what that means to us, and then maneuvering that through Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, is what we did. And we spent weeks kind of like interrogating those relationships and putting that on stage. So I totally feel that like more of those are on the horizon. That's something that I'm really interested in my work personally, like taking stories and narratives that Black people aren't typically seen in, or that you wouldn't typically hire a Black director for, and showing that our identities have place in those as well.
Nice. Great. Listen, when we come back, Marcus, I want to ask you specifically, where does Black theater and Black activism meet up? Where are the points of connection? But we're going to take another quick break. You are engaged with us in the Black Lives Matter, Black theater movement conversation with the legends of theater, Black theater, and the up and coming legends of Black theater. We will be back in just a moment.
Join us every Thursday at 1 p.m. as we go live for the True Colors podcast, where we sit down with artists and civic leaders to discuss the biggest topics affecting our community. Every week, our guests drop gems of knowledge while bringing the fun. Can't catch us live? No problem. You can view past episodes on our website and YouTube channel. Make the True Colors podcast part of your weekly routine.
Tanya, can you just speak to why it's so important for you to give to the next generation, to the students, to the early career actors, to help them break open that talent that lies deep inside them?
I can only keep what I have by giving it away. And so as long as I know that, and I keep that in the forefront, then I know that it's my job. I cannot go about this thing called theater, acting, or whatever if I don't help pull some young people up. I'm gonna say it again, literally, theater and art saved my life.
True Colors Theater, where Black stories are told.
All right, we're back. Marcus, I'm going to go directly to you. The question I want to ask you is where does Black theater and Black activism meet up? We gotta get you unmuted. There you go.
Hey, I literally heard nothing.
Oh, I'm sorry. You hear me now?
You asked me something,
Can
and
you
I
hear
can
me
see
now?
you speaking, but I cannot hear you at all.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if we can work that out, and we'll come back. We'll come back to you. Mr. King, you talked a lot about the early writers, the early innovators of Black theater. What I want to ask you is, how would you recommend that current theater leaders merge the works of legends like Lorraine Hansberry and Alice Childress and all of those folks with new contemporary work? How do we make sure that the lineage of theater is recognized and held, as well as new work being developed? Oh, Woody's muted too. Okay, I think you're on now. Yes.
Okay, I'm on?
Yes.
Okay. You gotta be deeply rooted in literature. You gotta read. You gotta read, you know? It's like, I may read 200 or 300 plays a year. I
Wow.
don't think people who run theaters read 200 or 300 plays a year. They'll do a workshop and have a reading. You gotta read them. The bad plays, you gotta weed them out. I read, 15 or 20 novels a year, and all of James Baldwin, all of Ralph Ellison, all of Lorraine Hansberry's work. You gotta read, deeply rooted in the literature of our people. And if a book comes out by Toni Morrison, you gotta be there to read it and see what she adds and look for it in a play. Or, Ta-Nehisi Coates, you gotta look for it in a play. You gotta read Obama's new book. You gotta read these books. And I know, and when I'm sitting with artists, certain artists, I know they haven't read anything.
Yeah.
It takes about 3 minutes, the conversation goes somewhere else about what we have to do. And I think Jonathan mentioned a sister who had auditioned for 4,000 plays. Wow, man. All she has to do is go to work at True Colors, and within a month, she'll be in 2 or 3 plays. But she can't, if she wants to integrate into the white world, the white world must come to True Colors and see her in this brilliant play by this brilliant playwright. And they'll give her whatever she wants, or an agent will come there and see it.
That's good. That's real good. And it also makes me want to ask this question. And I think Stephanie, any of you could chime in on this question. Looking towards the future for more examples of the kind of thing where a Beyond the World and Me went from the book to the stage to now a film. How does more of that start to happen? Any of you? I pose that, just put that out there.
Well, like I said, I think it has to do with the unusual partnerships. I think that the theaters now have to really look beyond the traditional proscenium stage.
Yeah.
And probably do what Alexis is talking about, the tiny theater is doing, figuring out where my grandmother told me that success was finding a need and filling it. Well, to me, it's like there's tremendous need out here, especially in this season. Our world is hurting, not just this country, not just the cities, the world is hurting, which means that there is a tremendous opportunity to reach out past your doors to see what is the need of our community. And then how do we create the work? How do we tell those stories in a way that translate on the stage and on this little thing right here?
Yeah.
Because to me, and I've been saying this for 20 years, I've been arguing with my real theater people about this is not theater. I said, I don't care what you call it, but the reality is that these are the times now that we can save our theaters, our work, our live work, because it has to do with how many eyeballs get to see what you're doing. What we love about Between the World and Me is that now the whole world who watches, was that on Netflix? You know what I mean? The whole world now gets to know who Ta-Nehisi Coates is, and they get to see what, to me, was a great story about a Black man's life. And in it, he told all of our stories. He touched on all of us. Right. And so to me, it's those kinds of partnerships. It's where does the theater meet the science, meet the medical, meet the gaming, meet the
interesting,
the technology, the VR, AI world in a way that we create something new and wonderful that will pay for my live theater.
Yeah, I think the collaboration, particularly between Ta-Nehisi Coates, Camilla Forbes, Mark Babunti Joseph. It was like that's the kind of thing you want to can, right? And so, Jonathan, did you want to chime in?
Yeah. What's being brought up is this notion of transmedia, right? How do Black and Brown stories get the opportunity to have a transmedia experience, which is an experience that utilizes all the assets that we now know as an opportunity to invite someone to an event. That event, transmedia, is mainly utilized in film and TV. And I think that if we're going to revitalize the idea of the live art form, there is going to be a need to think in a nuanced way of how we are creating the entertainment bubble for people to feel like, I want to go there. Because more so than ever, after when we start to reopen, especially in New York City, the conversation is not going to be about where I go. It's going to be, do I feel compelled to go? Because for me to feel compelled to go is a risk. It's a risk for me to sit in a room with people I don't know. It's a risk for me to sit in those spaces and to have a conversation. So I just think that it's going to be a conversation about compelled. And just a clarifying note, because Amber Aman is one of my friends. She was talking about 4,000 auditions due to COVID. So due to the theater shutdown, she was having to do 4,000 auditions, and mainly that was TV and film. As Jude had brought up, Jamil Jude had brought up, Amber has worked in Black theater, and I just wanted to represent her well, because I didn't want to get that back in DM being like, brother, what did you think? So I just want to represent
technology.
Yeah, I just want to represent her well if I'm gonna say her story. But yes, but you're also right, Woody. There is this also need to for us to really figure out what does it mean to build the infrastructure of the existing models that are already there. Sometimes you don't need to build something brand new. And what does it mean to actually have an ego death, meaning that we don't want the ego of saying it's all about me. We want to create a space for community.
Great. Marcus, I'm so glad you're back. Can you hear me now? And I think the note here is that you all have to. Marcus, I'm so glad you're back. Uh-oh. Can you hear me now? And I think the note here is that you all. We didn't see that.
Lord, so what's happening was I was listening to you on live, and now it's the echo. I don't know why I heard you just fine before the thing, and now I don't have the echo.
So let me ask you this question, and then the question is, where does creativity / artists and activists meet? Where does that happen? Is it intentional? What part of it is intentional? How is it intentional? Or is it more kind of automatic?
So I'm going to try to restart this and then re-enter. So maybe I can get my audio back.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. Okay. I apologize. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Okay, well, let's do this. There are some questions coming in from the viewers. Yes, Stephanie? You're muted. You got to unmute yourself.
Oh, I do? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I just wanted to add to what Jonathan was saying. Everything he said was right on point. And I will go back to something he said earlier, and that is ownership. Yeah. So as we are creating this whole new world, we have to be careful about who owns what. And well, I'll leave it there.
I like it. Thank you. There's a lot of conversation about Black generational wealth and how does that show up in owning our own products. And that's literary, that's playwriting, that's everything, goes across the spectrum. Mr. King, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say something.
Okay.
It's like, young people who entering this business, it is difficult to locate them and identify them. Jonathan is a rarity. Like, we knew Jonathan in another life, and somebody gave him an opportunity and he took it and he ran with it. We are looking for that kind of person. And back in the day, we looked for Richard Wesleys. We looked for Ed Bullins. We looked for J.E. Franklin's. We went all over the United States looking, even in London, even in South Africa, and look for these writers. And you may go and see things, but that does not happen now.
Well, Jonathan, maybe you can offer a bit of advice. How do Black writers get found?
So I mean, I think how Black writers get in a relationship with the Black theater. I think for MBT, we created a residency program. So the residency program was one way, but I think that there are multiple. I think figuring out who in your community vibrates at your frequency, right? All kinfolk ain't all skinfolk ain't kinfolk, right? That's a real reality, right? There's anti-Blackness work that happens, and that is just as violent sometimes as white supremacy work. And so, like, we have to be very, very clear that inside of this movement of Black theater, inside this movement of the Black Lives Matter movement, there isn't this tent that we all live in, right? There is a lot of individuality. There's a lot of nuance inside of it. Why they had to say all Black Lives Matter is because trans individuals did not feel like they were being represented. So like when we start talking about this understanding of what does it mean to create and what does it mean for playwrights, Black playwrights to be seen and amplified, I would say figure out who is your tribe. What people are your tribe, and go hard for them, and figure out how to navigate and work inside of their world.
I'm going to assume that, even if you find the wrong tribe, you have to keep looking.
You got to keep looking. You have to keep on looking, and you got to understand.
Don't give up.
It's all a blessing, and it's all a blessing because if you didn't try that tribe, you wouldn't know that that's not your tribe, right? But it's about abandoning that tribe when it's time. Like you can't be leeching on until last. Like so, just I think understanding who your tribe is. Like MBT, we do healing work. We do healing work towards human transformation. If you are a writer that is guiding or who wants to figure out what healing looks like inside of the trajectory of your human transformation inside the pen that you write from, I might be your person. I might be your person. Woody might be your person. Valerie, I mean, the Hansberry Project. There are so many different institutions that cater to the nuance of the Black expression that none of us need to be the pillar that holds it all. However,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do want to ask Alexis the very same question. In what ways do you get seen?
Yeah. Everything that everyone has been saying so far, just about all of finding your tribe, I think that was so critical for me, and being able to just explore the type of work that I want to do and the type of work that I like to do. And just to what Jonathan was saying, like figuring out people who vibe on my same frequency, like, yeah, we totally see the vision that's happening here. Or like, we might be a little not on the same creative wavelength, but I got you for later. Like, I know where you are. So I definitely think, and actually I was talking to a friend about this the other day, just the past 10, 11 months, having been inside, not being able to do theater the way that we traditionally think of it. And just to Stephanie's point earlier about figuring out like how to use our phones and how to use other means of arts and tapping into what it means to be an artist that isn't strictly tied to gathering people in front of a stage. Has been just so important for me, and gathering friends together and trying out different things. Maybe I want to write some sketch comedy and figure out if that speaks to me. So that I think just the continuation of exploring your artistry and exploring your craft, and what brings you joy, and the people who do that with you. And I think that once to Woody's point about the play, it's all about the work and it's all about the statement. Once that statement is made, once you have the play, once you have the work, like that's what people are going to gravitate to.
And I think that with technology, it seems to be making it much more accessible for people to put their thoughts. I'll just say thoughts and not necessarily work, because that's not always the case, but to put it out there and to have it be seen. All right, Marcus, can you hear me? Before we go to questions now, my question again to you is, where does Black activism and Black creativity meet? Is it intentional? Is it passive? And what are your recommendations for how that should be taking place?
I think it's intentional and passive. I think it's both. I don't think you have anything Black without creativity. There's nothing that exists that is Black that isn't creative, right? So anything that we touch is gonna have that creative bump. Even if we're like, we're gonna make this thing bump and we're gonna make this thing jump. Even if we don't say that, our presence is a creative step forward always. Now, where we meet. Now, I can only speak to my personal examples, right? So if you take a look at what has been going on, let's say in Atlanta, like let's take the summer, for instance, not even talking about anything that the artist created. If you take a look at what has been going on, and if you were there, I had the opportunity to actually be there in person at a lot of the protests with my mask, you know, if you're in person and you feel that and you're touching that, you know, you don't have to be a Black artist to be a Black creative. Like you don't. I saw, like, you go out there, I go out there with my friends who work in public health, who are teachers, and you see the creativity. You see it happening in front of you. I don't think there's ever been a separation of Black activism and Black creativity. There is no point of there. You can't find a point of meeting because they've never been apart. Good. They've always intertwined with each other. Wherever you have Black activism, you have Black creativity. Wherever you have Black creativity, you have Black activism.
Yeah.
Every creation of a Black person is a form of revolution.
I like it.
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that absolutely answers my question. You know, and it reminds me of A Night in Miami, where, you know, right, where you've got Malcolm X, you've got Sam Cooke, and you have Muhammad Ali all together, and that's creativity, activism, that's arts. It's all that happening in this one big swirl. All right, I'm going to go to a question. I have a question. It says, Stephanie mentioned new paradigms for Black theater. Noted that we talk more about partners for later. Oh, they want me to follow up on that question around what kinds of partnerships should we be looking for when we are talking about creating new paradigms for Black theater? Stephanie, unmute yourself.
They control it. There you are. Okay. So I have two thoughts about these kind of partnerships. I think there's one opportunity for more theater companies, storytelling organizations to come together and share resources, so that the partnerships, maybe they have one social media marketing person who gets paid by all of them, so that you can have a high level staff working for multiple companies. So that's one kind of partnership.
And that's the kind of work you do, right?
It is, yeah. I try to help people find their mates.
Yeah, great.
The other kind of partnerships are, like I said, with the unusual suspects, you know, the people that where there is a need in your community and you see those people working and you know that there are opportunities to help tell the stories. And together, like what Jonathan is doing, I think it's important that we are archiving the traditional work. I saw a question about, you know, what happens to Lorraine Hansberry and Amiri Baraka and all that. Somebody is archiving that, using those multi-mediums that are available, while others are doing live street theater, while others are doing, you know what I mean? Or they're in hospitals, or like there's an amazing company called Theater of War that has been dealing with taking excerpts from plays. Mostly they were focused on the Greek tragedies because they were all about the war play, you know, written by generals. And they were using them to talk about all kinds of social ills. They had on all of the frontline workers, doctors and nurses, just talking about the issues of trauma and, you know, the things that we're dealing with in our lives right now. So the partnerships are there to be had. And I think that the not only are the audiences there, because now I'm talking to a broader audience than just someone who would come into a traditional theater and sit and watch a play. I'm talking to people who are hurting, and as Jonathan was also talking about that whole idea of grieving, how can I tell those stories from our perspective, Black people perspective? We already have the heart. Like Marcus said, We are the most creative people. We've been making stuff up out of nothing for our whole history here.
Right.
So to me, it's the unusual suspects.
How would you see that translating into the support, the financial support for Black theater? I mean, you know, linking theaters together is one thing, and you know, sharing the resources of actually getting the word out. But what about as it relates to supporting, financial support for this work?
Well, I think that the reality is that the kinds of funding that we've gotten in the past always runs out. It's never enough to start with in the first place. So to me, the partnership with, like I'm on a board at UNC Chapel Hill with the Carolina Performing Arts, and I'm watching those artists utilize the resources within the university setting that are allowing them to raise corporate dollars, corporate marketing companies who are promoting the products or whatever it is that they're selling. That they're in partnership with the planetarium, who has a whole nother group of funding sources. So the unusual partnerships, listen, I think that there has to be some kind of partnership between for-profit and not-for-profit, because not-for-profit was never not-for-profit. We always needed to make a profit, we just didn't know how. So to me, this hybrid of for-profit with a heart or with a mission is where we need to go. So like I mentioned, the gaming world, I'm totally into technology. I cannot believe that this is the largest industry in the world. Where are the opportunities to tell our stories in there?
With technology.
There's so many opportunities right now. Just blowing my mind. It's blowing my mind.
I'm going to veer just a little bit, and thanks to the folks for reminding me of some of the questions that I originally wrote. But I want to ask this question around, you know, this period of extreme wokeness that we are in, which is an opportunity, right? But we all saw the flurry of "We Stand With You" statements after May 25th. And so with that, what we see is a lot of focus in theaters on doing Black work, right? We don't necessarily see the theaters changing in their administration, but we see focus on doing more Black work. Do you have any fear, any of you have any fear around the potential of co-option of Black work in and by non-Black theaters in this moment? Woody? I'm gonna go to Woody. I think did you want to say something now? And then I see you, Marcus, and I'll come back to you. Woody, go ahead.
If you look at the Manhattan Theater Club, if you look at the Signature Theater, if you look at the New York Shakespeare Festival, they now all have associate directors, and the Signature Theater with its 3 theaters has the complete works of Dominique Moruso, has a whole list of Black playwrights. They are taking care of them, but they are co-opting them. Those playwrights are not available in the first round to Black theaters, you know? So yes, they are co-opting them. Because ultimately, Dominique Bayo and other writers ultimately want to make a living at doing theater. And like Stephanie said, the Black theaters never had the kind of money to give a playwright, 3 or 4 playwrights, $15,000 or $20,000 a year, and they could do everything else they wanted to do. That does not exist.
How does that hurt? How does that hurt Black theater in general, besides the fact that you can't afford it, given the kinds of resources that, you know, say a Stan Rosen or, you know, other Broadway producers have? How does that hurt then the continuing evolution of Black theater?
Because you don't have the plays. You don't have the plays. If you don't have the plays, you don't have Black theater unless you have the plays.
Yeah.
You could I mean, we could talk forever, but ultimately, it's the play that the audience is coming in, sitting down, looking at.
Yeah.
And so I just want to uplift in that moment is that like, then the opportunity, and that's where, and I'm a fan of always turning lemons into lemonade. So the opportunity is to find the next Dominique, the next Amiri Baraka, the next Ntozake. The opportunity is actually to allow for you to be part, again, why I say ignition space, for you to own the very dynamic space that can happen when you create the runway for a Dominique to show up. How do you create the mechanism that allows for the runway for a Dominique to show up? And part of that's reading a lot of plays. Part of that is taking, making spaces for emerging artists. And I know emerging is a word that we throw out so flippantly, but making space for them so that it's not about, yes, the Dominiques, the Lynn Nottages, the Katori Halls, the Jocelyn Bios we might not be able to support them at this level currently right now. We might be able to do it in the future. However, what we can do is that we can support the next generation that will make sure that the ecology is healthy. Because right now the ecology isn't healthy if it doesn't have a diverse landscape of storytelling.
Marcus, you wanted to jump in too?
Yeah, I mean, and once again, I'll use personal experience. So in Atlanta over the summer and this fall period, there was a flurry of Black hires and Black promotions in theaters. You know, this went all the way from the Alliance and trickled all the way down. So I get it. You know, people want to make their money. I understand that. As an artist, I want to work. I've had this conversation with other Black artists about, hey, Marcus, why do you work at so many white theaters? Well, Marcus has kids. Marcus needs to work at white theaters because Marcus needs to make money. Marcus needs health insurance. That's what it is. So I get that. But, you know, there's a lack in Atlanta, right? In Atlanta, a Black city, there's a lack of competition for these white theaters, right? There's an absolute lack of competition. And when you go to them and you ask them, hey, what would it look like and what would we need to do to create a Black theater downtown so that the Black theater in this Black city isn't all the way by New Hope Road? For those tuning in who don't know where that is, it's not downtown, right? So, and they'll tell you, well, we're already fighting for audiences, yada, 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 yada. Like what we're seeing is Black artistic colonization. These people are taking Black taxpayer money, Black public money, and producing white plays and paying white directors, paying white associate producers, all these people who live in Sandy Springs. They're taking that money out of the community to create white work. And I get it's all about the play, and a lot of times Black people want their work to be impactful, but white people put out a lot of trash stuff. There's a lot of trash plays that go on in a lot of these houses. I mean, I'm serious. You know, you go through, it's some of it's bad. Some of it's bad, and they put a play out because they need to fill their main stage season. So what is it?
You get no argument from us. We know about that. You get no argument.
Well, yeah. So, you know, we talk about like, how do we fund Black playwrights? You know, do we need to fund the Black playwright who's going to be the next Morris So? Do we need that? Or do we need to just start funding Black art, no matter how impactful we deem it to be? You know, so there. Yeah, Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm gonna, Stephanie and Alexis, I think you both have something to say. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Alexis.
I was just going to hop on what Marcus was saying and just talk about coming out of this moment that we're in right now of all of these theaters across the country making these statements after We See You White America came out and talking about appointing new Black people in positions of leadership. Next season is going to look very Black. I'm interested in what the systemic structures are that these theaters are making. I think that's what I'm paying attention to next season and 3 seasons from now. And I think also we talk a lot about bringing Black people into positions of leadership, whether that's in Black theaters or in like predominantly white theaters. I think we have to be really careful about analyzing like what the power structures are in those theaters and whether we're just bringing Black people into a harmful environment, right? We're just giving them a position of leadership and not giving them any tools to succeed, or making sure that the theater that we are working at, the theater that we're coming into has an anti-racist ethos, has people that we can go to if we experience microaggressions, if we experience aggression in relation to racism, in relation to sex, in relation to gender expression. So just piggybacking, that's what I'm really curious about going into these next several seasons, not just the shows that are going on the stage, but the infrastructure and how the systems have changed to make them more welcoming, emotionally, mentally, and physically for Black people.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think, Stephanie, when we were talking earlier about, the institutional kinds of mainstream development, shifting the paradigm does not mean that we're bringing new people into old structures.
Correct.
Yeah.
The structure has to change. And if you are inside of any institution, you need to be responsible for holding their feet to the fire and making sure that the structures are changing. Because racism is institutional, it's structural, it's built into the fabric of how this country thinks. And so you have to be prepared to dismantle anything that is racist. If an institution is not anti-racist and make those statements, it means that they are perpetuating racism. But what I wanted to say too is that I feel like that's part of what has to happen in terms of coming out of this season. The partnerships between theaters. Who are the right theater companies to come together? Woody's looking for playwrights. Jonathan's cultivating playwrights. Alexis is cultivating playwrights. I mean, what funders are going to be looking for are new paradigms, new ways to work to get our theater created, written, developed, workshopped, put on a stage. And they're going to look for who are the people coming together that are meeting needs outside of just having my little 300, 500, 1,500 seat theater, doing my little play and then going home. Because that model doesn't work anymore. So what's the new model? We have never been afraid to make it up. You can never be afraid to make it up. That's all they do. They're just making it up. Most of the time, they're copying us.
Exactly.
So we have to make it up as we go. We make it up. And like Woody said, you can't be scared that you might mess up, that you might fail. There's no failure here. There's just feedback and opportunity to evaluate what you did and change your mind, change your direction, make it different, morph, adapt, like we as Black people have done our whole history.
That's good. That is really good. Thank you so very, very much for that. And I think also, the fact that we are in an age where there's only technology for us to connect through provides another opportunity that we may not have taken before, where we can actually come together. And not have to actually travel. Okay, we've got just 2 minutes left, I think. And so I'm gonna not pose the closing question to everybody. I'm gonna pose the closing question to whomever might want to respond to it. As we're looking forward to a time as the summer approaches, and there will be cookouts of some sort. I don't know what your cookout brand is, doesn't matter. What's the conversation going to be around Black Lives Matter and Black theater? Go. Whoever unmutes themselves.
I mean, I think that it might be really powerful when thinking about what does it mean to be at a cookout is just acknowledging the power of being at a cookout. There are some people who haven't had a hug in over a year. And when I'm talking about the grief, I really am talking about there is a psychic grief, physical touch grief that has actually shown up inside of the membranes of a generation. Children have grown up with the understanding of this as their normal. And that is going, when we start talking about what does recovery mean, I really do think we have to start talking about what does the mental health recovery look like for Black folks in this country. When we talk about the vaccine, Black folks not wanting to take the vaccine because of our history of being tested on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's going to be a real need as we really start thinking about what is around the cookout, what's at the cookout.
Yeah.
Is acknowledging, can we create a cookout that feels equitable and safe for all to be invited? And then once we have that space actually crafted, how do we turn that into, or how do we acknowledge that as art making, because that's art making, community activism and love, grace, all wrapped into one.
So it's less about, how do we plan, how do we move forward? It's more about let's heal together.
Let's heal. I mean,
Yeah.
I just think if we're not having that conversation, then we are acting like this. We didn't learn the pause. We didn't learn what that pause was supposed to give us.
Got it.
Pause was intentional as a universal gift. It might have hurt and might not felt good, but the universe provided us a gift in a moment, and we now get to understand how to unravel that gift to become the best of who we are.
That's that. Thank you. We know you're vibrating on that higher level up there where you're bringing the waves to you. Stephanie?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, I feel like God has given us this moment in time to really reflect on who we are, whose we are, who we want to be. And so I feel like conversations have to be had around what's your new ideas? What are your innovative, creative thinking? What are you thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
I've been so fascinated. I've been interviewing millennials just to ask them how they're doing in these times.
Nice.
Because I want to know and I want to encourage them to not be afraid. Our greatest enemy is fear. And it's our faith that has brought us this far, right?
Yeah.
So to continue moving forward, it's to be inspired to think creatively out of the box. What's your new idea? What have you been thinking about? Who do you want to be when all this is over?
That's awesome. I'm going to just, I see Jamil is here and ready to wrap the program up, but I would be remiss if I did not ask Mr. King if he had to had a closing few words for us. Turn your mic on. You got to, okay, there you go. Now we can hear you.
I just think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that True Colors is putting this panel together, and to talk about Black theater and Black Lives Matter. And the artistic director is going to say a few words, and I hope that they will do plays reflecting that. I hope they will do, it's all, I guess you gathered from all the things I was saying, it's ultimately based on the literature. You could, no matter what you do, it's a play from page 1 until the end. It's someone directing that play. It's someone costuming that play. It's someone like, whether it's Denzel or Morgan Freeman or Felicia Rashad, very young, acting in that play. You see them and you foresee their possibilities, and the audience come in and foresee it as well.
Well, I can't thank you enough for reminding us all that no matter what it looks like, no matter what programs we're trying to put together, no matter how we're trying to bring community together, the content is what's at the center of it all. So I'm just really, really grateful. I am grateful to all of you for allowing me to spend this time with you. I already told Jamil, get the calendar so we can schedule part 2. Because we got more to talk about. And it has just been an absolute honor. Thank you to Woody King, Stephanie Hewley, Jonathan McCrory, Alexis Woodard, and Marcus Hopkins Turner. Thank you all so much. Giving it over to you now, Jamil.
Thank you, Vivian, for moderating that conversation, y'all. I hope that the content of this conversation really enriched you. I told you from the beginning it was going to be a blessing, and I hope that you caught yours today. Y'all, I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick shout out to our production manager, Lisa Watson. She has a long tradition and history with the Black theater movement, and she has brought that love that she got from her time in Black theater in New York and brought it back here to Atlanta, and we are the beneficiaries of that. So shout out to you, Lisa Watson. Also, big shout out to Brian Cave, Layden Paisner for sponsoring this community conversation, and all of you who are tuned in today. Y'all, if you think so much of anything that we've said today or anything that any of these companies are doing, I ask that you go ahead and check them out, follow their bios and their websites, go donate, give them a little love. If you show us a little love too, we won't be mad at you. Y'all, we have just had a blast today. This is going to live on our YouTube page, so feel free to share it out with your friends, get them to fill it out. Also, we're going to drop right here in the chat before you go a survey. We'll also email it to you if you registered. Please fill it out. This helps us make our programs better, and it provides us more opportunities to do the type of partnerships that we've been talking about. The Drinking Gourd, where we're going to go out and we're going to find those playwrights, and we're going to be working with Black theaters like the Hansberry Project, like some of these others here collaborating. You know, we started dropping some things about what's happening at True Colors, and we're really going to embody and hold up all the things that were said today. So y'all, thank you so very, very much. I can't wait to see you all back in the theater. I miss daps, hugs, and handshakes. And hopefully when everything is right, we can get back to that. But until then, check us out. You know, I did a little promo. Check us out on Thursday, the podcast. You may see one of these familiar faces back on the podcast on Thursday, where we continue to give you content that thrives at the intersection of artistic excellence and civic engagement. I love you guys. Thank you all so very much, panel. I appreciate you. Come back to True Colors, where we keep telling Black stories. Peace.
Thank you.